This is Red Ice Radio. From the dream to reality. RedIceCreations.com.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Red Ice Radio, the channel where we focus on the most important topics. Keep your browser tuned to RedIceCreations.com to follow us on a regular basis. My name is Henrik Palmgren, and we are coming to you from Scandinavia. I hope you're well wherever you are in the world. And although the Earth is moving at 1,675 kilometers per hour through space, I hope you can maintain your balance in these challenging times. Santos Bonacci has for over 30 years been researching the holy science and ancient knowledge, much of it heavily veiled in language, allegory and symbolism, and much of it has been deliberately hidden to keep the higher truths from reaching the masses. His website is universaltruthschool.com, and we are going to begin here in the first hour today to talk about Roman, papal and ecclesiastical law. This is about the fascinating study of etymology, words, terms, and hidden clues in the language that we use, especially when it comes to legalese, and how this has entrapped humanity for at least 1700 years or so. Well, we're going to discuss the Roman roots of this system. Right, welcome everybody. We are talking here with Santos Bonacci today. This is going to be a very, very interesting program. We're going to focus on Roman law, the popes, the ecclesiastic law, and maybe a little bit later as well we're going to talk more about the story of Jesus, the Christ story, of course. But obviously, first off, welcome to the program, Santos. It's nice to have you with us. How are you today?
Very well, thanks, Henrik. Thank you very much.
It's good to have you with us, as I said, and I think it would be interesting for me and our listeners to hear a little bit quickly about your background, obviously, because you're a musician. You are playing acoustic guitar, I think, flamenco. You can explain yourself the genre, I guess, but I wanted to ask you how you got onto the trail of conspiracy research. In some cases, it actually seems to go hand in hand. There's a lot of musician in this particular field as well. What's your story, Santos?
Yes, interesting. That's true. Yes, the genre of music that I play is flamenco Latin jazz, instrumental. But music's always been there. But the other thing is that I probably got interested in deep science and knowledge, and I realized that things were not the way they appear, probably in the early 80s when I read Immanuel Velikovsky. Now, at the time, I'd just become a Jehovah's Witness. I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness and rejected it when I was 14 and became, let's say, a non-believer. So I did that for about 7 years, and I did the normal things without going to any Christian meetings. But then in my late teens, I decided that I wanted to become spiritual, and for some reason I just gravitated back to the Jehovah's Witnesses, and I was a witness for 20 years. Now, about 10 years ago, I stopped going to the meetings because I was disillusioned. So I have a background where I'm studying and reading Velikovsky and things like that, but I'm also part of the Christian, what I call the Christian literalist historical church, because they're based on a fiction, and which I will go into later, and it works beautifully. It works beautifully with the fictional law that is called maritime and canon law, which is running parallel with our common law in the Western world. And all these fictions, as I will explain, come from Rome. Everything, the lot of it. See, people have been taught in the schools and whatnot that Rome fell in 500 when the Huns destroyed Rome and they sacked Rome, and then there was the Holy Roman Empire with the Carolingians, and they destroyed the Merovingians. The Pippins were also instrumental in setting up and morphing the Roman cult. So it's been morphing since it came from Chaldea, from Babylonia. It's basically Babylonian, but it's a counterfeit of that system too. Really, it's a pure fiction, and it's been morphing. But as I will go into the recent history of the 1400s and the 1500s, when trusts were set up by the Vatican through papal bulls, and trusts were set up called Sestui trusts, and the first one being in 1455. I'll pull that up on my screen so I don't give any wrong dates here. I've got it all lined up.
Excellent.
In 1455, the first trust was called Romanus Pontifex. In 1481, the second trust, Aeterni Regis, which means the eternal crown. And in 1537, Convocation. These three trusts, these three Sestui trusts, Sestui meaning six, become and correspond to the tiara or the triremium that the Pope wears and has been wearing since the time of Boniface in 1302. Now that triple crown, which used to be a double crown at the time of Boniface, represents the three trusts which claim all the property on the planet, all the people, the chattel, the cattle, on the earth, and all their souls. So the Holy See is salvaging the souls lost at sea. And so they administer their maritime law. And the maritime law is the commercial law, which is also Vatican. You see, when people think that the first incarnation of the Empire of Rome was from Julius Caesar to when the Huns destroyed Rome, then the second would be the Second Reich, when the Holy Roman Empire existed for 1,000 years and which Napoleon Bonaparte ended. Then, of course, Hitler came along and initiated the Third Reich. It's all Roman, and it's all morphing. That's why Hitler was in bed with Pacelli, Pope. Look, his name slipped me at the moment.
Was it
nonetheless,
Pope Pius?
Pope Pius.
Yeah.
Yes, and they were in bed together, and because it's always Roman, it's the Roman world. Look, their calendar dominates the whole planet. Russia resisted it until the Bolshevik Revolution. England resisted it until 1751, then ceded, and then their whole calendar system changed. The whole world resisted it because good people realised that Rome was just taking over the whole world with this system. So the calendar dominates the whole world. The alphabet. You have a look at the Roman alphabet on every computer, digit board. There's the Roman alphabet, the Roman script. Now, in Japan, they have 4 alphabets. They have kanji, katakana, hiragana, and they have one called Romaji. They call it Romaji because its origin is Rome. So in the East, in the West, in the North, in the South, all around the world, the calendar, which has enslaved mankind. The alphabet. And how many Latin languages are there? French, Spanish, Portuguese, of which are the biggest languages and the most widespread languages on the planet. If you combine all the Latin languages, of which English is one, it's a sister language. It's absolutely a sister language of Latin, carries the Latin. It carries the Latin through and through. In fact, many times it's more Latin than Italian, which I speak, and I am Italian. Now, I speak all the Latin languages, except for Romanian. But if you look at those languages, they've carried that alphabet to the ends of the earth. They've carried the Roman historical Christ to the ends of the earth and their corporations with the conquistadors and the conquest of and the imperialism and the conquest of all these so-called savage indigenous peoples and the conversion of these people with the Bible in their left hand and the sword in the right. How many people perished because of this corporation of Christianity that has spread the earth. Now, it's all Rome, and not only is it the calendar, not only is it the canon law, which is sitting quite comfortably these days, side by side with canon law, and we think, with common law, law of the land, which is our law, which is who we are, and which is why people are awakening and turning to this concept of sovereignty and dominion, especially dominion, because we are free spirits and souls and flesh and blood, and we are not corporations. We have been corporatized by these three trusts. So when we are born, our informant parents tell the government that we are born and inform on us without our knowledge, and the government registers and gives us a number. And that number follows us for the rest of our lives. In fact, for 75 years, that particular document lasts. And what happens is the governments have used that without telling us to create a trust. So we have a Sestwi KV trust, and we have this trust without our knowledge, mostly. There are people who do know, and there are people who are wealthy in this world who know about their trust and know how to use it to their advantage. But we, on the other hand, who haven't been told of the good use of, it's a great system. It's a fictional system, but it's a great system. If everybody knew how much power they had through their trust, and because of the fact that they are the beneficiaries of these trusts, the world would be a very, very different place. We would be in a much, much, much different place. And these monstrous governments, these fascist dictatorships like the United States, how they're becoming, imperialist Rome at its best, at its very, very best, these things would not be around. It's because of our defaulting and our not being in honour and in competence that we haven't known the law and known what this birth certificate really means. When you register, regis means the king, and you hand over your dominion to that king, and you have entered into a contract, unwittingly. And when they summons you to their courts, these people are doing commerce with your fictional name, and they send you an address, a letter or a summons or an invitation to go to their place of commerce, because they're going to offer you a service of adjudication. That's all they're doing. A magistrate has no jurisdiction in common law. None whatsoever. They are just there to offer a service of adjudication. And we, the sovereigns, are beginning to realize that we don't need that service. We don't need to contract with these people. They are, in fact, private corporations. And this is the message that is spreading around this planet on all levels. On all levels. And people, and it's part of the awakening that is going on, and what Plato called the anamnesis, the remembering, the time that we would remember who we are. And that's the thing that I teach with the science of astrotheology, the holy science. I teach the as above, so below, and the science of man, know thyself, because this is in fact what this corporate Christianity, which is absolutely counterfeit and fictional, is persecuting. They are persecuting the knowledge of the science of the stars and the soul. And in fact, that is what the Gospels and all the holy legends and fairy tales and nursery rhymes and and epic poems such as the Iliad, the Odyssey, the Metamorphoses of Ovid, and all the great literature, Aratus and the Phenomena, Marcus Manilius and Astronomica, all these great epic poems, which they called the holy science, because when you know the above, the stars above, then you know the stars that are inside each individual organism that we are, each individual body that we are. And this is the science that they have persecuted for so long with their fictional story. So
Santos,
I've said I'll let you have a
absolutely.
questions.
No, it's excellent. It's really interesting, and obviously we're going to kind of dive into the depths of this, if you will, as well, and deconstruct some of these things and try to explain it. I think one point when I was watching your lecture, obviously, that you have up on YouTube specifically about the law here, and you went into an interesting part that I don't think many people know about, and that is in regards to papal bulls, and a specific one. First off, maybe we can just talk about what a papal bull is, and then obviously get into this idea of unum sanctum, and maybe you can describe for us what that actually is, because that's an important one, obviously.
Oh, yes. Now, unum sanctum is the first express trust created in history. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to point people to a gentleman in Sydney, Australia. I'm operating in Melbourne, by the name of Frank O'Collins, and he has a website which is connected to my website. He has 4 of them, and you can connect to these through my website, which is called universaltruthschool.com. Universaltruthschool, one word, .com. Now, Frank O'Collins has done a lot of research on this Vatican ecclesiastical history, and he's uncovered pretty much a lot of information about the fact that our courts are purely based on, they are ecclesiastical, and they are based on the sacrament of penance and the sacrament of indulgences. And all of this goes back to a certain Boniface, the name meaning do-gooder, bon meaning good, and face, to do. So this man, now, interesting that Dante Alighieri, one of his contemporaries, confined him to the bottommost parts of hell for how evil this man was. And he set up unum sanctum, and in there, with the blood of a kid, because this is how you make a papal bull, on the skin of a kid. Now, Frank O'Collins has done enough research to uncover that the kid here implying a child, a true human child. Now, you will have to see his websites to uncover all of this history that he's uncovered, and he's done all the research. So I'm pointing people to that, please, because he's a fantastic researcher, and he has audio files on talkshoe.com. Now, what this papal bull basically said was that everything in the world belongs to the Roman Catholic Church and all the souls therein, basically. Now, what happened then is that in 1455, these Sestuicae trusts began. Now, Romanus Pontifex was another papal bull, which is a Sestuicae trust by Nicholas V. And it's the first, according to Frank O'Collins, it's the first testamentary deed and will and first crown over land, real property. So it deprives you of your real estate. Yes, that means your the titles on the land, the titles for your property belong to the Vatican. You have right of use, but they own the titles through this trust, which we have been contracted with at the moment of birth registration. These 3 trusts are set up in our name, and we are the beneficiaries, and the government is the trustee.
I just want to mention one thing really quick here about the trust, because we're talking about history and things, and people are like, no, that time is over and all that. But I just want to alert people to one thing here, a very quick one. It has to do with when the UK or Britain signed the Lisbon Treaty, because then the Queen gave her royal assent and signed goatskin, and this is referred to as instruments of ratification. And then these were sealed, bound in blue leather, and then sent to Rome. It's a news item that was out there in 2008, specifically in regards to how Britain basically gave up its sovereignty to the EU at that stage. But I'll link this up for people so you can read, as a reminder that this is still going on today, and all these documents are still lodged in or stored in Rome. But go ahead, Santos.
Yes, and they are stored on. It's a very specific way of making bulls, and you can investigate this on. You can Google this information; it's readily available. But they do this on parchment or what's the other word for it? A vellum. They do it on skins of living creatures because it gives it life. Because without it cannot be written on just paper, because paper does not have the same life. A life was not given, and the spell cannot be, and the spell will not be able to be binding. It won't be binding. It must be on the skin. See, and no one has challenged this system. No one has come up with a different system. See, the world we live in is just a kingdom of ideas, and it's purely Roman.
Yep.
It's all Roman. The architecture, the thinking, the Catholic religious thinking, and believe you me, the 30,000 denominations of Christianity, so-called Christianity, 30,000 registered denominations are all corporations doing business. They are all registered as corporations doing business. So they are all little children of the great mother of this system, the mother of all corporations, which goes back to these trusts, but goes further. It goes further back. It goes to the Constantine the Great and what is called the donation of Constantine, which was found years after. And supposedly Constantine said that since Peter is the chief apostle of Jesus, and Jesus entrusted all the kingdom of this earth unto Peter, and because the rock of Peter is in Rome, that Rome shall have this contract with humanity, and they shall administer the affairs of humanity, and they shall ask taxes and provide a service to mankind. You see, Rome, yes, basically it's just a kingdom of ideas that offers its services to us. Just like the mafia. When the mafia comes knocking on your door, you can rest assured that they're going to offer you a service. Because that's what they do.
We'll protect you, but if you don't take the offer, we have somebody who can beat you up too.
Yes, and this is the system of Rome. It's pure counterfeit of what we once had. We once had, even Rome was a much better place in the Republic. If you read Cicero and Virgil, the great writers, Cicero being the friend of Julius Caesar, and was invited to be part of the triumph rule Rome, but he declined, and he was a writer and spoke about the Republic and how beautiful the Republic was, and all these writers speak about the time when Rome was a republic, because that is what a constitution is. It's a It's a government by the people, of the people, for the people, and usually the aristocracy, the rule by the best. But now we have the elite, who pose as these aristocracy, the poet kings of Plato. And of course, Benjamin Franklin, when he came out of the famous meeting when they founded the Republic of the United States, and the woman approached him outside and said, "Sir, what do we have?" And he said, "You have a republic if you can hold on to it."
Mm-hmm, yeah.
See, now yeah, exactly, because now it's morphed into a democracy and capitalism and the Federal Reserve and a lot more fictional entities which really have their birth in Rome, because the Anglo-Saxon, the Anglo-American world power is virtually Rome. Washington, D.C., the city of London, the square mile in London, of course, and the Vatican, these three states, Vatican controlling the spiritual propaganda and the poisoning of the minds of people and their think tanks with the Club of Rome and the Bilderbergers get together to learn new ways of poisoning people so that they don't awaken. For instance, fluoride in the water, medicate them, mass medicate them so that their pineal glands cannot produce DMT, so they can't awaken to this fiction. Now, the Vatican, together with the City of London, which controls the finances of the whole planet through their Bank of England and their interest system, the Federal Reserve system, and Washington, D.C., which controls the military arm. And I encourage people to have a look at the beautiful DVD by the people from Ammonstock Productions called The Ring of Power. The Ring of Power is a wonderful product, and I think people should begin watching that immediately, because it'll open your eyes as to how this fictional empire, this kingdom of ideas, which is Rome, has tentacles all over the earth. But people are starting to open their eyes and see what it is, that it is absolutely harmful to mankind, and it's just corporate fascism, and it's running amok. And people have had enough. They've had enough.
That's
and
right.
They're starting to, in many different ways, on many different levels, they're starting to tell this system that they are in no need any longer of their services. We don't need the services.
And that's excellent. I want to discuss a little bit more with you, obviously, the latest incarnations, what's happening today in terms of, if we look at the whole system as such, and with things kind of turned on its head a little bit recently in terms of the economic question, and things seem to go down the drain, obviously, in terms of the Federal Reserve and economy-wise over in the States, and I want to get your take on that a little bit later too. But I want to stay a little bit more with the history here and ask you, because there is an interesting part that you brought up as well, that has to do with the Knights Templar, with Boniface VIII and his kind of fight, if you will, with Philip IV of France, and for a while, obviously, after that, he moved the whole papacy to France in Avignon. It's called the Avignon Papacy, and it was for a period there for 70 years or something like that. It was in France.
Yes.
What do you think happened there, and what role does the Templars have to play in this? Because now, if we zoom forward again into history, now they're being being let back into the Catholic Church again with this Sinian parchment that was released in 2007. Tell us about this, Santos.
Yes, well, look, there's always shenanigans going on there, because the elite families are tied into the corporation of the Vatican, going back to the family, the Piso family. Now you can Google the Piso family. Yes, you can find out a lot of information about this family. They are the Flavians. Vespasian, Titus, and Domitian, the Flavians. They actually, remember, the Flavians in the year 70 overtook the Julian dynasty. Now, when Vespasian killed Vitellius and the Flavian dynasty began, if you read Tacitus's histories, you will find that he called those days the days of horror. These were the days when blood filled the streets of Rome because Vespasian was killing people that were faithful to Vespasian, and just there was bloodshed everywhere. These people built the Colosseum. And just like Julius Caesar, they believed in the concept of bread and circuses, and we will control the masses. And these two families created the Jesus Christ historical myth. Now, what I mean by that is that it's a fiction. It's pure fiction. And I've exposed this in all of my astrotheological videos, which are on my YouTube site called Mr. Astrotheology. And in there you will have 4 products, one dealing with the law, exposing the ecclesiastical nature of this conspiracy, and the other 3 proving beyond all doubt, that the historical Jesus story is a lie, the most massive, the most whopping lie ever told in history. And the bigger you tell them, the bigger they go down and fall. Now, Rome has a saying, a maxim, and it is Rome's saying that let he who shall be deceived be deceived. Eusebius, and the so-called Saint Augustine and the likes, Jerome and all those boys, founders of the fiction with Constantine the Great, they taught that deception was in order for the stupid masses, and we shall administer it, and we shall look after the Goy, the Gentiles. And they started this system. It has been morphing since Julius Caesar, then Vespasian, who was a god, according to Titus, his son. Now, Titus went to Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, and this is when all the stuff with the temple and the mystery with the Knights Templar began. So I'm sort of laying a foundation so you can understand what happened with the Knights Templar and the Crusades and all those types. What were their names? Jacques de Molay and the ones before that. I just can't think at the moment, but we know that they started in the 1100s. Anyway, what happened was Titus came back to Rome in procession, and he put up the arch of Titus, and there was the items of the Jewish temple, the menorah, and all these things that he took back, and that was very, very symbolic moment in history. Scipio destroyed Carthage and Hannibal, and Carthage was also a rival of Rome. Jerusalem was causing problems. Alexandria was dealt with when they burnt the library, and Julius Caesar did some damage there too. Hypatia was killed by the Catholic Church. They've murdered countless of great philosophers and teachers and men of wisdom. Countless.
You're saying that they destroyed a lot of the other important, philosophical centers of the world, and where knowledge was stored, and also other things as well, warfare or power centers, political centers, because they wanted to focus the power in a centralization, attempt to Rome specifically, right?
Yes. And this, the Julian, and by the way, JC, Julius Caesar, Jule comes from Yule. Yule is the sun, as the sun goes around the wheel, which is the Yule. Julius Caesar is the king or the Christ. So it's basically the name Julius Caesar means Jesus Christ. Caesar, or the Tsar, as Hitler was called, or the Kaiser, Wilhelm, that's just another word for Caesar. And Caesar is another word for Christ. And that's when the Caesars began, when the Christ kingdom began, because that's how it all started. They made the emperor a god, the son of God. And so his son became Augustus. And Augustus was proud, and he gave himself the month August, just like his father Julius gave himself the month Julius. Right in the middle of summer, July and August, to give themselves more glory, and hence the sun cult implications, because they consider themselves to be the sons of God. And then Vespasian did the same thing. If you read Tacitus, you'll see there that he performed miracles just like Jesus. He spat in the eyes of blind people and healed them, and performed miracles, according to Tacitus. And Titus made him a god. And it's well known that if you read, there's a great book called Caesar's Messiah by Joseph Atwell, The Roman Conspiracy to Invent Jesus. If you read that, you'll understand all of this, where the Flavians were actually the ones who invented and put a heavy historical overtones into the already existing Gospels, the four Gospels, and they retrospectively placed historical figures and interwove them into the narrative. And that's how you make fictional Gospels. And so Herod appears in the Gospels. Pontius Pilate appears in the Gospels. Let's see, who's the governor when the census of Augustus? Anyway, Tiberius appears in the Gospels. So it's sort of, we sort of think, well, this is history. It's got to be. But then again, it reads like a myth. It reads like pure myth. Jesus and his 12. King Arthur and his 12. Anyway, I'll get back to that later. But what I'm exposing here is that what appears to be so historical about the Gospels is a work of art. It's a work of art. And it was finished by Eusebius and touched up by the Jesuits in the 1500s. And we have been given a very, very, very fictional version of the past. It's absolutely pathetic what is being taught in the universities about the past. I've reconstructed the past in my videos, and you can only reconstruct the past if you understand the cycles, or in particular the cycle of precession, the precession of the equinoxes, the 24,000 year cycle, which I will go into later. Now, I want to get back to your original question about what the shenanigans that happened in the 11, 12, 1300s. See, this monster, this absolute fictional monster that we live under, has morphed and morphed and morphed, and the latest morph really would be the Patriot Act of George Bush and Homeland Security and all of that bullshit. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. But 1933 was significant with the bankruptcy there of the Federal Reserve and we becoming chattel and the system of birth certificates. The time of Abraham Lincoln was also another victory to the Vatican and the Jesuits, working hard to destroy the Constitution of the United States of America, not the Corporation of the United States, but the true country, which does in fact have a true trust, testamentary trust, and that is the Constitution. Basically, the greatest documents in history are the Magna Carta and the American Constitution, because they are true trusts. The people are signatories to those trusts, whereas the Vatican trusts have been signed by, popes in the privacy of their own abode and without our consent. We didn't consent to those trusts. And so basically when the with Boniface and the popes going to France. This is all very obscure history, but it's all about the shifting and the morphing of these corporations. These people have been at it for thousands of years in perfecting their system of enslavement. Which, if you want, we can go even further in history, back to the time of Akhenaten, and before that to the Hyksos of the 17th dynasty in Egypt. Now, that's up to you. I can go down that tangent if you like, because there's a lot to uncover back there, or you can stay in the more recent history.
Well, I think we can stay there. I just want to, if we briefly get your take on where the system originates from. I mean, if we go back to, I mean, in that regard, then Moses, the 10 laws received from God and so forth as well. There's been a lot of articles detailing the similarities with the Babylonian laws of Hammurabi and some of these other Mesopotamian emperors or kings, whatever we should call them. Do you track it back to the same area, the same point, basically, as well?
Oh yes. There's a connection there. Akhenaten and Moses. One only needs to read. Sigmund Freud wrote about it. Many writers. There's an Egyptian scholar who now lives in England called Ahmed
Osman.
Osman, who wrote about about this story of the 18th dynasty. You see, in the 18th dynasty, a lot of interesting history happens. We have the dynasty of the Amenhoteps and the Tuthmoseses. And, of course, Hatshepsut is in there. Nefertiti and Akhenaten are in there. And Tutankhamun are in there. And, of course, Akhenaten. Now, Aten, the atom, is the disk in the sky, the sun. But it mostly has a negative connotation to it because there's what's called the black sun, which is Saturn, which in all ancient theologies were brothers, twin brothers. Saturn is Set, and the sun is Horus, Set and Horus. And in Jewish and Christian, it's Jesus and Satan. Satan is Saturn. Now, atom and Saturn and Latin sound the same for a very, very good reason, and I'll go into that later. But what happened with Akhenaten was, supposedly he was the first monotheist. And basically what he was doing was utilizing the system that was created by the Hyksos. Now, the Hyksos, according to Franco Collins in all the research that he's done, and the many sources that he has, were the people who built the Suez Canal in the shape of a crescent moon. And Suez is Zeus spelt backwards. And originally that crescent moon of the Suez Canal was called Zion. And these Hyksos, the shepherd kings, were in control with the Amun priesthood in Thebes and Luxor, of all the trade that went through the canal, and hence they acquired one of the greatest stock exchanges in history, a fine stock exchange which had the blessing of the Amun priesthood. You see, you can't do fictional money, without the blessing of the priesthood. They go hand in hand. It's hand and glove to a perfection. And the governments have been using the priesthood and the bankers hand and glove since that stock exchange. And Akhenaten morphed it again when he changed his name from Amenhotep. By the way, Amun means it's the second half of the name Solomon, and we use it in prayer when we say, in Jesus' name, Amen. The Aten is another name for Amun. Now, Sol Amun are two words. Sol is the sun, and Amun is the sun in Egyptian. So, and Solomon means with God is peace, or it has peace. Soul in the Jewish shloma, they say peace. And guess what Amenhotep means?
Same thing.
Well, Hotep means peace, and Amun is the sun.
Mm.
So that is where Solomon is, according to Ahmed Osman and many, many, many other writers. And Tuth Moses, well, that's where your Moses comes from. And Tuth is Toth, which is T-U-T in Egyptian, which is D-U-D in Jewish, Hebrew, which is Davud or David, and that's your David. And your Moses, and your Jesus is Tutankhamun, Tutankhamun is Jesus, and Akhenaten is Moses. And these are the historical figures that the wonderful Babylonian Levi priests painted into the story of the false history of the Jews in the Promised Land and all of this. Mm. Most Jewish scholars now treat it as pure myth. There's no evidence at all, not a shred of evidence of Solomon and David and all of that. But I don't want to go into that because we're looking at our court system, and our court system. You see, the Vatican. What is the Vatican? Well, it's what Akhenaten and the Hyksos created, and the Julians and the Flavians and Constantine's people, which is a hand-in-glove operation of banksters, and religion. Religion to deceive the masses, fictional religion to give support and solace and comfort to the ignorant masses, and to persecute the enlightened few, and the scientists, and the people who are urging the race to grow up and remember who they are, and reclaim their dominion and their sovereignty and responsibility for their actions. You see, the Kingdom of Rome employs many servants. You see all these people with uniforms, policemen and sheriffs and bailiffs and army soldiers, killing, knocking on people's doors with summonses to attend court because you've done something wrong, to go to a hearing. Well, you see, the hearing is the sacrament of penance and indulgences, because the priest of Baal, which is the Bar Association, that's why they dress in black, because they are the black ministers of the Latin Saturn Atom Church, which is basically what we call satanic. But I'm not talking about Satan, the devil, and his demons and all of that fictional concept of the monotheistic, historical, fictional Christians. I'm not, because that's a fiction. But what I'm talking about is you see, these people have always known how to harvest the negative magnetic energy of Saturn. In astrology, Saturn is considered to be a malefic. Venus and Jupiter are benefics. Their influence, or their refracted light, which comes to which is reflected onto this earth, are very, very beneficent rays. The sun's rays are beneficent. Flowers grow. Animals live and eat. We can see. There's photosynthesis. The fruits grow. Right. The sun is the great benefactor. Jupiter's the same, but you see, Saturn is not. And how the churches operate is that they harvest the negative magnetic energy of Saturn. That's why you'll see pentagrams, upside down pentagrams in courtrooms, in star chambers. You will see all these Masonic devices which are used, these symbols which are really pure nature's symbols, which are really used in the right way for the health and spiritual enlightenment of mankind, but these people know how to invert those energies, and what they do is magic on the masses. When people go to court, they are going before a magistrate. A magistrate is an ordinary. Now, what's an ordinary? Okay, well, an ordinary is this: an officer of the church who by reason of office has ordinary power to execute the church's laws. That's what a judge is. A judge is an ordinary. A clerk is a cleric. A court is an oratory, courtio, oratory, where you go to confess your sins. We're going to have a hearing today. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. Will the accused stand before the judge, please? Your Honour. And all this theatre goes on, and it's all fictional, all of it. If you know who the characters are, you never, ever will lose in court. You might not win because these tricksters are very, very clever with their magic. Now, a writ, look at the word writ, W-R-I-T, comes from ritus, rite. A rite is a religious observance, a plea, a prayer, a holy rite. And that's why they send you a writ, a warrant. A warrant is a seal of a writ. A writ is a form of indulgence. A person who writes a writ is a scrivener notary. A scrivener comes from two words, scribo and vene. Scribo means to write, and vene comes from veni, V-E-N-E-I. It means indulgence. So your scrivener notaries are writing indulgences. What's an indulgence? Okay, now I will tell you what the Catholic Encyclopedia says, and you can check this out on Wikipedia, Catholic Encyclopedia definition of an indulgence. And this is powerful. An indulgence is the full or partial remission of temporal punishment due for sins which have already been forgiven. The indulgence is granted by the Catholic Church after the sinner has confessed, a hearing, and received absolution. The belief is that indulgences draw on the treasury of merit accumulated by Christ's superabundantly meritorious sacrifice on the cross and the virtues and penance of the saints. They are granted for specific good works and prayers. You see, what the Catholic Church has assumed is to be our little parents, our little caretakers. And so they will invite us to court so that they can administer the sacrament of indulgences. So we can go there, and they have monetized our sin. You see, we've been naughty. We've gone 5 kilometers or 5 miles per hour over the speed limit. So we've broken the law. It's not common law, which is injury, loss, or harm, but it is fictional canon law, law of the high seas, commercial law. You have breached one of their commercial rules. So they're going to, you've sinned. And because you have this treasury in heaven, because Christ has given this wonderful sacrifice, you see how important this historical Christ myth is? It underpins all their magic. For without this historical lie, which the universities are spewing out in abundance, and the churches are spewing out in abundance to their church followers and churchgoers, it's mind control at its best, at its very, very best. Now, the other thing is the sacrament of penance. This is what the sacrament of penance is. Penance is a sacrament of the new law instituted by Christ, in which forgiveness of sins committed after baptism is granted through the priest's absolution to those who with true sorrow confess their sins and promise to satisfy for the same. It is called a sacrament, not simply a function or ceremony, because it is an outward sign instituted by Christ to impart grace to the soul. As an outward sign, it comprises the actions of the penitent in presenting himself to the priest, the accusing, note the word accusing, that's what a prosecutor is, the accusing himself of his sins, and the actions of the priest in pronouncing absolution and imposing satisfaction. The whole procedure is usually called, from one of its parts, confession, and it is said to take place in the tribunal of penance, because it is a judicial process in which the penitent is at once the accuser, the person accused, and the witness. Take note, because this is exactly how the court system works. You are accused by a prosecutor, pro se meaning on your behalf, and cutus means skin. So he is a man who is impersonating you, going to court with the summons and saying, I am representing the human flesh-blood person in this corporate fiction. I am accusing that person of sin. So just as the sacrament of penance is, you are the accuser, the person accused, and the witness. The priest pronounces judgment and sentence. The grace conferred is deliverance from the guilt of sin and the case of mortal sin, in the case of mortal sin, from its internal punishments. Hence, also reconciliation with God, justification. Finally, the confession is made not in the secrecy of the penitent's heart, nor to a layman as friend and advocate, nor to a representative of human authority, but to a duly ordained priest, an ordinary or a judge or a magistrate, with requisite, now I put those words in, sorry, I put in parentheses the judge and the magistrate.
Yep.
With requisite jurisdiction and with the power of the keys, that is, the power to forgive sins which Christ granted to his church. My goodness, if you can understand what I have just read, you will cringe at what is going on without our consent in the courtrooms of the Western world and what is going on in our churches. It's absolute tyranny and blasphemy, and mankind has had enough. And like King David, now we are going to tell Goliath that we no longer require his services.
Well, that's a good idea, Santos. And I think we should begin to wrap things up with the first hour then, and then continue talking more with you here in the second. And I want to put focus on this idea that you mentioned here, that because of the lie, basically, then of the character of Jesus, the way that they have portrayed this character and invented that whole idea, is important, because now that is what enables them to have the power. The Pope as the vicar of Christ, or those who stand in on behalf of Christ, if you will, then they vent Christ first and then they stand in for him, and then they have the power to grant absolution or forgiveness, if you will, as well. And that's what you've been running through there, and that's very, very interesting. I want to talk a little bit more about that in the second hour, but why don't we, as a means to wrap up here, Santos, for the first hour, mention your website again, universaltruthschool.com, and I do believe you have some DVDs and things available there as well called The Key. Tell us about that, Santos.
Yes, look, The Key is just a very amateur production in terms of filming, so please forgive me for that, but it is 2 hours and 40 minutes of science, ancient science. I show the teachings of Plato and Hermes and Pythagoras and Porphyry and Plotinus and Julian the Emperor, and I go through and show how this rich philosophy that was bequeathed to us by very, very, very wise men has great pertinence to our souls and to our future well-being and our awakening. And you will not get any richness, anything similar to it in any of the corporate churches of Christianity today. And I urge people to see it. You can see it on YouTube for free. You don't have to purchase it. It would be great if people would want a good quality hard copy to purchase it, and they can purchase. There's 3 other products that I've done which are increasingly getting better in quality. The first one was edited by my son, who is 18 years old, and he helped me, because I don't have a big budget. You will see that the filming is, well, as I said, it's not professional, but the information, I can assure you, will expose everything that I've been saying. So you can see this on YouTube, also on my YouTube site called Mr. Astrotheology. And I just want to say that if you like those, please stay tuned for 4 more, which are much more better presented. I have a better cameraman. I've had better graphics, better information, and better delivery, because I started doing these presentations with the key, what I call the key, and now I have improved a little bit in the delivery. I have a habit of going off on a tangent, and I've tried to stay onto a schedule, and I think these new ones that will be up on YouTube within the next month will be really, really worth looking at.
All right, excellent. We will have your YouTube links up as well, of course, as your main website, universaltruthschool.com, so people can bookmark them and then take a look at them as well. But I suggest highly, obviously, to go there right now and take a look at what already is there, because the information is what's important, just as you mentioned, Santos, not primarily the production, although that aids obviously in the presentation overall. But again, the information is what we're talking about here primarily. So we're going to carry on then in the second hour. So stay with us. Thank you here for the first hour. We'll continue with more here then after this break. In the second hour, we shift focus over to astrotheology. Santos explains how all the ancient legendary stories, myths, Bible, fairy tales, etc., all have one simple common origin. We'll talk about how the 12 constellations of the zodiac corresponds with the body, religion, our calendar, holidays, seasons, time of day, and more. Santos claimed the zodiac is the true gospel. He says this language was heavily veiled in allegory and symbolism, and much of it was deliberately done to keep the higher truths from reaching the masses. Later we discuss 2012 and the coming 3 days of darkness. We also talk about the sun, Christ consciousness, and the influence of the animalistic chakra in the universe. Don't miss this second hour or any of our previous programs. Subscribe to redicecreations.com and get access to the members area. We have a year of radio for you to enjoy for free. All our latest programs stream or download from the website. And then when you're ready for more and want to tune into the second hour of our program, consider trying out a 3-month subscription. It's only €5 per month. And by the way, that's about €4 less than a beer in Norway, the United Nations' favorite country. Next up on Red Ice Radio, we have Alex Putney, Jan Irvin, John Coleman, Nick Redfern, Robert Buvall, Hugh Newman, Penny Pierce, Kevin Annette, Will Hart, Ken Thomas, Marcia Schaefer, and Bob Dean, to mention a few. Keep listening to Red Ice Radio. Right now, for our members, we continue with the second hour with Santos.